Can you just tell us about who you are and what you do for WHE?
Hi, my name is Simeon. I am doing graphic design for World History Encyclopedia. I do maps, illustrations, infographics, and all kind of graphics things that we require, like logos, animation for videos, T-shirts, anything we can come up with. My background is in graphic and visual design. I used to do computer visualizations and 3D models for architecture. But I always liked history, so when the encyclopedia came into view, it was a lucky moment for me.
That's great. That's great. So, how did you find us? Actually, how did it happen?
I was going through the news one day, and then there was this article about somebody visualizing ancient palaces and fortresses all over the world. It was one of those lists article about 10 best Asian palaces restored digitally, and I read through it because I was really interested in 3D modeling. Then somewhere at the bottom of the article, World History Encyclopedia got mentioned, and as things happen these days, I followed the link, and I saw that they were looking for graphic designer, volunteer, and I wrote an email. A few days later, I got contacted back by Jan, the founder and CEO of the encyclopedia, and we've been together since.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. So, let's talk about maps. How do you go about making a historical map? Like, what's your starting point?
When I first started, I realized I need a good quality base, like a graphics base, geographical base, and I looked online for a possibility to purchase such a base of the whole world, basically. So I would be free to make my selection depending on the historical time or region I want to cover. And I found such a base. It's a digital vector base of the whole world geography in different levels of detail. And after that, I worked on it to make it unique for our purposes. So all the maps could be superimposed on each other, rescaled, and we're gonna end up with either time travel or a global map of some period. Once that is done, I can start working on my historical map. Thanks to the encyclopedia, I have a solid library of historical atlases. That's our core base. But there are also quite a lot of databases out there with historical maps from universities or schools or academic publications that I can consult. So based on those, normally trying to get at least 3 sources for the information, plus the details, I start drawing the map. I use Photoshop and Illustrator a bit. And as with the base, I try to follow a similar set of rules for color selection and style and fonts use. So our maps would all look compatible to each other from the point of view of size, detail, type of arrows, things like that. The encyclopedia has a group of very educated editors that look into my map, find all my typos, and together we end up with one complete product.
Is there a time period that you are most interested in on a personal level? I mean, I know you cover everything with your work, but are you personally interested in something in particular?
It's always the case that I get very interested in the period that I'm covering. So in a way, you could say that every month there is a new period. But somehow the period of the Napoleonic Wars, Napoleonic era, is very dear to me. Maybe it's subconscious. For years, I used to live close to the Waterloo battlefield. So kind of you can see history as it happened or after it happened, but attached to geography. So like the ultimate map is the real place, as they say. And then you go from there, and the end of the 18th century, beginning of the 19th century was a very dynamic time in history. You get Russia expanding on one side of the map, United States appearing on the other side, all the wars and strives for peace in Europe. So yeah, it's a lot to learn of that period without discarding any of the others.
Why do you think it's important for people to learn about history and to get an understanding of what happened in the past?
Yeah, the easy answer is that we have to remember what happened because it tends to repeat itself. And all the bad things that are happening happened before in very similar ways. And I would say a lot of this is because some people don't care to learn about why and how this happened, and other people who kind of drive the bad things happening seem to know history very well. But also, you have things like the people believe easier in conspiracy theories and aliens and stuff just because they don't know history. When you see the pyramids or the Eiffel Tower, you would think that they just appeared on a green field. And it's very easy if somebody tells you that somebody came over and taught the people how to do it, which is kind of robbing the human society of the ingenuity and creativeness that is built in us. So yeah, I think that's the other reason to study history, is to know that things don't appear suddenly out of nothing.
Yeah, I always find it with history that the people in the past, even going as far back as ancient Sumer, they were just as intelligent as we are, if not more. They roughly knew the same things that we know. They just had less technology, right?
Yeah, and but you can follow the improvement of technology in one continuous curve. It's not like somebody sitting in the attic suddenly splitting the atom. Or there were those geniuses, but if you look close, you would see that they knew a lot of what people knew before that. So yeah, history tells you that this is a process, not just like spots in time that things happened.
To what extent do you think that maps and infographics help with the learning of history?
Well, always thought while reading books on history or even historical fiction that for me in particular, it's very difficult to visualize the relationship between all the players in the story or in the history without being able to see the geography where it happened, the detail and the relationships. For me, and probably for a lot of other people, the visual representation of a map as an illustration to a history book or history story is very important, and it allows you to position yourself, and you otherwise won't understand, or I would otherwise don't understand. So I go from my position of a person who needs a visual aid to understand the story.
Yeah. Is there like an example of a map that really helped you understand the historical event?
I think a good example of that is the map of the battlefield of Troy, according to the Iliad. When we were preparing that map, I realized that the distance between the Greek camp and the Trojan and the city of Troy is only about 3 kilometers. And you can see how close all these combatants were in the 10 years of war. It gives you a totally different appreciation of how it happened and what happened, rather than if you assume that it's a sprawling field of like 50 kilometers from one side. But for me, that was an eye-opener, and I seen the reception of the map after that people had the same opinion.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. You do a lot of infographics as well of timelines or family trees. How do you approach those? Because isn't it hard to know what to put in, what to leave out?
I approach those from point of view of my personal curiosity. So if we take the simple one, like the 5 good emperors, we were doing a video, and the video team wanted an infographics to support the text, the narrative. So I at that point I was not sure who the 5 good emperors and why, but then I started to ask those questions that supposedly the viewer will ask themselves, and I started building a map, and then the questions beyond the names of those 5 emperors were who came before, why was that person not a good emperor, who came after, why Commodus, which is the first after the 5, was not a good emperor. And then when you get the 5 selected, why were they called the 5 good emperors? So asking myself the questions I want answered, I try to answer them through the infographics.
Right.
And it seems to be a working formula, because people are more or less the same, and if I want to know, everybody wants to know a similar thing. And good thing with working in the encyclopedia is you're not this guy in the attic doing things on his own, but you have all these other people who come to you and tell you this is not interesting to me, or this is too much, and then through that conversation, you see the final infographics.
Right. So when you do your graphic design work, you collaborate with the editorial team and the video team, is that right?
Absolutely. Probably I bother them too much, but yes. A lot of the infographics start as illustrations for the videos that we make on YouTube, because we already have the script, and a lot of times when I read the script independently, I suggest elements that we need to illustrate that for me look interesting or easier put in visual than just described.
Right.
Then the video team has their own opinion. We discuss it. The editorial team chimes in when I share the first draft, and it goes through many levels of collaboration and corrections and suggestions that we end up with what you see on the encyclopedia page or in the videos.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. Um, it's the downside of filming outside. It's pigeons, there's drunk people. Who
Well,
knows?
wait for the French Air Force.
Yeah, and the Air Force, indeed. Yeah. Nice. So we are here at our team meeting in Burgundy in France, and I was just wondering, what are your impressions of the region and of the meeting itself?
Well, all this part of Europe and France is full of history and a lot of detail and things that one wants to know. Burgundy is very impressive in the way that it was always a borderland, being a kingdom and a duchy and independent and influenced by other players in history. And seeing this for real in its castles and its churches and even in the simple villages, it was amazing as a kind of reinforcer of what I thought before, not to mention the good nature and the good wine all over. Yeah, I think we learned a lot, more than I was expecting. So it was a really good time.
Yeah, definitely. And is there any message that you would like to send out to our audience, our readers, our viewers, the people who love your maps, maybe about history or life or World History Encyclopedia?
No, I think from what we've seen, people have embraced the encyclopedia as a close friend and advisor, and I think that relationship should continue to deepen. I would just want to encourage people to be civil when they have remarks or observations on our maps or articles. You don't have to always point it by starting on the negative. We're always ready to correct our things, and it's always very good thing to see that somebody has seen all the details of a map or infographics and have noticed something that nobody else has noticed before. To make mistakes is human, and we are always ready to fix things. And I'm always very enthusiastic when somebody has picked something deep in the details of a map and saw it and mentioned it to me. And I always write back to people thanking them, and we continue. It's the good thing about the encyclopedia is that's not a blog or a podcast or a website only. It's also, as the name suggests, encyclopedia. So we go back all the time. We refresh our information, and new research comes about, and we always try to be at the top of the wave. So yeah, just stick with us, and you'll see good stuff.